dogs make the best companions for humans, this podcast aims to help make humans better companions for their dogs. Welcome to the Baru Podcast, a modern lifestyle podcast for dogs and their people. I'm your host, Charlotte Bain. I've been caring for other people's dogs for more than 15 years. And while I've learned a lot in my career, I definitely don't know it all. So I've collected an ever-evolving roster of amazing dog people. And I learn new things from them all the time. Hi, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Baru Podcast. In this episode, I chat with Dr. Robin Berman about the best ways to support children when facing the loss of a beloved pet. Psychiatrist and parenting expert, Dr. Robin Berman is an associate professor of psychiatry at the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. She's also a founding board member of the Resnick Neuropsychiatric Hospital at UCLA and an advisory board member of Matthew McConaughey's Just Keep Livin Foundation. She's also the author of Permission to Parent: How to Raise Your Child with Love and Limits. We chat about the importance of allowing the child to grieve and work through the arc of their feelings. So let's just jump into the chat. First of all, thank you so much for jumping on to chat with me, Robin. As I mentioned, I'm going to have a few chats around pet loss this season of the podcast, and I thought it'd be really important to talk about children and pet loss. Mm-hmm. As you know, I don't have children of my own, so I can only imagine how delicate this time could be for the parent and the child. I assume for many children, this is kind of their first introduction to death and to the loss of something that they love. And so I thought, what better person than you, Dr. Berman, somebody that I adore, one of my favorite people, to help the parents help the children navigate this time. So thank you.
Oh, what a service. What a service, because I do get about a call a week for pet death.
Do you really?
Yeah, it's a very big topic. And I think you're the first one to address it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard about it on a podcast. So
yeah, there's some podcasts that are dedicated to pet loss, but I have not seen nor heard of anything that's dedicated to talking about children and pet loss. So it's usually about the loss of a pet of your own and how you navigate that, but not how, to my knowledge, how you help your kids or your family navigate that loss. So,
because as we know, pets are part of the family. They are family members.
Absolutely.
As you know.
Yes, I do know.
We've got some furry family members in both of our houses,
we
right?
Sure do. So I guess if you want to just jump in, my biggest question is pretty broad, but how should you talk to your children about pet loss? And is there a good way of introducing the topic to your children? And does it vary, I guess, depending upon the age or
very good point. It definitely varies upon the age. You know, obviously you're going to say more to an older kid than you would to a 2 or 3 year old. Yeah. But what's so interesting is this hyper parenting movement that we've seen, or the helicopter parenting, snowplow parenting, whatever you want to call it, where parents have a very difficult time tolerating distress in their children. And so they want to make everything go away. They want to bubble wrap the road. They want to, if there's a problem at school, rather than having the kids work it out, they want to call the teacher and get the kid kicked out of the class. They don't want their kids to suffer. Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice if life didn't have suffering?
Right.
But yeah, like the first Buddhist tenet is suffering is part of life.
Yeah.
And so preparing a kid to manage disappointment is actually kind of the key to helping them with mental health.
No,
so
interesting.
You have parents who are tap dancing faster and faster, trying to please their kids, trying to make their kids happy, whereas happiness is about learning to tolerate loss.
Yeah.
Sadness. bouncing back from disappointment. So what better opportunity that when you have a tragedy like a pet loss, I get a call, I'm just going to buy him another puppy. I'm going to buy another goldfish. I'm going to stick the goldfish. Literally, I had the call. I'm going to take the goldfish, dump it in the toilet. And by the time my kids comes home from school, there's going to be a goldfish and he'll never know.
Right.
And what you do is you rob a child of the ability to manage his own feelings. So you treat feelings like they're a hot potato. Like, oh, this is scary. Don't mention it. They can't, the meta message is they can't handle scary. They cannot do scary. They cannot handle any charged emotion, as opposed to, oh, it's my job as a parent to walk them through this charged emotion and to deal with loss and to teach them that loss is part of life. So I think of a story in my book, Permission to Parent, where there was the Lion King, the father dies, right?
Yeah.
And so I was doing a group of parents and the woman had actually lost her husband. I have permission to tell the story from this woman. It's in my book. Yeah. It's actually in my book. And she said, I skipped over the part where the father dies because I didn't want my kid to be upset. As opposed to an opportunity to process loss. Right. So that's it. We want to protect our kids. So the most magnificent example of somebody who had it right was Mr. Rogers. And there's this scene on Mr. Rogers that if anybody who's listening wants to look at, it's just beautiful. It's on, and you can find it on YouTube, where he's talking to a child about a dead goldfish. And he literally walks into the kitchen and he's like, oh, look at this fish. It stopped moving. Wow. Oh, let me give it food and see if is it sleeping? And he literally walks a child through death. And kids absorb energy. They're literal, like they have bionic ears, they have bionic eyes, and they absorb your energy. So if you're like, oh, is this okay? But we're going to go get another puppy and don't worry about it. It's like, okay, you're so anxious, lady. Clearly I need to be anxious because you look a little crazy right now. Yeah. You know, you're tapping pretty fast to please me, as opposed to saying, sitting with the feeling and being the lesson. I always say you have to be the lesson before you teach the lesson. So being very calm, and saying the truth. Right. Because you think about kids who grew up in Africa and see death all the time and see the cycle of life. And it's kind of crazy to think of, here's this furry dog that was a puppy, and then he grew old and he became a family member and everybody loves the dog. And then all of a sudden the dog's not there. And I've heard parents say, oh, the dog went to grandma's house. Grandma lives in Arkansas, but the dog, we can go, but just like, oh my goodness, it's okay to sit with feelings. Yep. Because you have to feel it to heal it. And parents want to skip over feeling. And the distress tolerance on parents in this last decade is really, if I wrote another book, it would be called Distress Tolerance. So some of these really painful moments in life for kids are teachable moments. Right. And they're opportunities to be sheltered into understanding grief as the flip side of love. Yeah. You know, the love is so powerful, the love of an animal. So I think a million patients over the years are clients. I like to call my clients, I don't like patients and I don't like to client. I like evolvers.
Evolvers. Oh, I love that.
Evolvers. Yeah. I was like, I was trained as a physician, so it was obviously patient. And then I was like, that sounds like too passive. And then, I was like, evolver sounds more resonant to me because that's really what you're doing in therapy. You're evolving into hopefully a better version of yourself. Yeah. So it's when parents call and say, I'm just going to not say anything. I'm not going to let them say goodbye. My kid's only 4 years old. But the kid knows the dog is ill. Yeah. And the kid feels the energy of the parents. And it's okay to see your mom cry because they love the dog. I had a mom say, I'm just wiping my tears so, she doesn't see me crying. I'm like, it's okay that she sees you crying. You're showing her, I care, I love. This is a furry family member and it's sad and you're going to be okay. Right. So I always say you honor the feeling, right? And then you want to give the confidence statement. Like, I understand this is so difficult, and we're going to get to the other side.
Right.
And that's like holding a balance. And that's very neuroregulating for a little brain. And to see your mom and dad sad, but having that common statement, we'll all get through this together. And let's brainstorm ways. Maybe we can write a book about Muffy, and let's get all the pictures out of Muffy and make a little art project, and let's make a scrapbook. And I know my kids, when our dog died, they were very, very young, and we talked of the dog dying, and on their own, they made a little video
They did.
of all the memories of the dog set to music. And it was their way to process the loss. Yeah. So I think parents rob kids of the very thing you want to teach them, which is being at home with your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love Mr. Rogers. He's literally like, look at the fish. He's dead.
I think I actually saw that episode.
Yeah, did you really?
I think I did.
It's quite memorable because it's the tone that he says it in, this very containing, like parents are emotional containers. Like literally kids borrow our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
They literally borrow our nervous system. We're all energy. We're all connected. You feel somebody's anxiety, you feel their happiness, you feel their joy, you feel their sadness. So to skip over feelings is like our number one job is we're an emotion coach. We're supposed to be teaching kids how to manage feelings as opposed to pretending they're not there. So I don't think there's an age where you can literally make up not talking about a dog who they know died, or a cat, or whatever the furry friend is.
Right.
I just think, but are you going to say, oh, this dog had cancer and we had a liver removed, but you don't have to do TMI.
Got it.
So anyway, have you experienced that with some of your clients? Have you experienced the pet loss and the grief? Because the grief is pretty profound.
The grief can be incredibly profound. And I have, to be perfectly honest, Robin, most of my clients, we've only lost a few of the dogs that I've cared for in all of these years. And so, everybody's a senior citizen now.
Yeah.
Most of the dogs. So that's part of why I wanted to have these conversations, because I haven't firsthand had these experiences with my clients. I remember losing my own dog when I was younger, and I did a little, exactly what you said. I created like a ceremony. We had a memorial. I wrote it out. I wrote out the whole thing. I gathered my family. We had to go through the whole ritual as we would with any death. And in hindsight, I can't say that it was healing for me, because I don't know what that, I'm sure it was, but I was in third grade, so I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure what that looked like at the time. But it's something that I haven't had firsthand experience with as an adult enough of. So,
but it's interesting that you had the peace of mind and the insight to have that ceremony as a third grader.
I know, isn't that interesting?
And it's beautiful. It shows obviously you're an animal lover from the get-go, from the very beginning, and then also ceremony and ritual do help. So. One client, they came to their house, or evolver, as I like to say, and there was different kids of different ages, and it was said, "Are you comfortable staying when we put the dog down?" And two of the little kids said yes, and the third one said, "I'm going to say goodbye now and go to my room." And so part of it is also explaining the situation and empowering the kid to know when it's too much for me. I don't want to be in the room. And that's so okay. But it's allowing, like you had the ceremony and you had the service and you did the ritual of it, because, love and loss is just the flip side of a coin. So I just think it's such an important moment, and not to skip over it or pretend or get the other goldfish or I have a friend who lives out east, and he's like, "I'm buying another dog. Our dog died. I have a 4-year-old. I was like, slow down. Hold on a minute. You can't replace it. You can't make it go away." I don't know why we think we have to make sadness go away.
That's such an interesting point. Yeah, I don't know either, because it's such a lesson, and you learn so much about yourself, and you learn so much, as you said, being alone with your feelings and being alone with your thoughts is like such an important part of growth, right?
It is. Pain is a traveling professor, right? It teaches you, we transform with pain.
Right.
We get to be, a higher version of ourselves if we sit with it. And I think of all the clients over the years, the one in particular, a little girl very attached to the dog. And the mom let the little girl like go say goodbye. And the girl threw her body on the dog and was like heaving and convulsing. And the mom was texting me from the other room, like, what do I do? I'm like, let her cry and grieve and love on the dog. And then the next day, the little girl's like, oh, she's in doggy heaven and she's so happy now. And she was able to work through the arc of her feelings. Yeah. But parents stop it. And then kids start to learn, oh, sadness is scary. And I can't handle it. Clearly, my parents think I can't handle it because next day I'm getting another puppy, or they're not letting me say goodbye, or they're making up stories that they're at grandma. I mean, kids are way too smart.
I think we used to say like, oh, we're sending the dogs out to the farm or something like that.
Yeah.
It's an expression that people used to say like in the 70s at least. Like,
yes. I grew up with that expression too. Oh, they're going out to the farm. Like, what farm is this? Can I go visit the farm?
Right.
It doesn't roll out very well. Think about how that rolls out. Oh, take me to the farm for my birthday. I want to see the doggy, right?
Yeah.
So attachment is such a beautiful thing, right? And it's something to be, I'm into like the word dialectic, which is holding two, it's a term from dialectical DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, but it means holding two opposite opposing feelings at the same time. So two opposite feelings can be true at the same time. You can feel really sad that your dog died and also very thrilled that you had him and got to love him. You know, they both, it's very integrated when you allow yourself to not just be like, the dog died, I got to move on. Right. You know, snap out of it.
Snap out of it. Yeah.
Yes. Why are you still crying? You know, it's like that girl wailing over her dog and should I put an end to this? Like texting, you know, what should I do? Let her be, let her feel the feelings. I don't know where the playbook got that we can't tolerate anybody's feelings.
Right. On the flip side of that, if you think that your child is feeling the feelings for a lengthy period of time, I know children kind of can, from my experience, can get through things quicker, I think, than we can sometimes. But if you see, like, what are the signs that if your child is really struggling with the loss of a pet?
Creating a cohesive narrative and acknowledging and validating the feeling, because there's no statute of limitation on grief. And I always laugh in my books, DSM, they say, oh, it becomes a disorder after X amount of months or years of grieving. To me, that's so silly because it's such an individual. Don't you love a psychiatrist saying the DSM criteria? Yeah. That's like our law book. But I do believe that everybody grieves differently and everybody feels. Some people, the volume on feeling is higher than other people. Some people are going to get defensive and move on and repress it. And some kids are going to keep saying, oh, I'm sad.
Yeah.
I miss my doggy. And then the parent is there to validate the feeling. I get it. Parents want to just move on like, oh, you want to go Disneyland? We're having ice cream for dinner after dessert. You know, they want to just make it go away, make it stop. Because it's uncomfortable to see your kid suffer. Very uncomfortable. So I think sitting with the feeling. So I don't think there's a statute of limitations on I'm sad my dog died. And I think when you validate it, it tends to, I miss her too.
Right.
I get why you're sad. She was such a special part of the family. She slept in your bed every night. You must miss that dog. Allowing the processing to happen together and to be a safe space for the processing of grief, as opposed to, you know, it's been 2 weeks, you know, you should be over it by now.
Then kids will probably think that, like I would, like something's wrong with me for still having these feelings, you know, and then internalize that and then that leads to a whole host of other issues.
Yes. I always say denying feelings doesn't make them go away.
Right.
So the little kid says, I'm cold. And the mom's, you're not cold. It's like, oh, you know, you're not hungry. You're not hungry. You just ate. Well, no, I'm hungry. You're not hungry. Wouldn't it be great if you're not sad? I'm really sad about my puppy and my kitty cat. You're not sad. We already talked about that. You're not sad anymore. It's that like false control that you can make it go away. And it's absurd because the volume's only going to get louder on that grief, when it doesn't have a space to, and that's why everybody does have a different way of expressing. And like you say, there's nothing wrong with feeling terrible 6 months later, or a year later, hearing a song or seeing a video of a dog that reminds you of your dog, and then just crying, because grieving comes in waves, and I've just worked with people who've grieved parents and friends. I've been live with grief for a lot of years as a psychiatrist, and it does come in waves, and someone can feel very healed and then see a movie with a dog in it that looked like their dog, and just like all of a sudden I'm like in the movie theater bawling. Like, I don't know what happened to me. Well, it's like waves. It comes in and it comes out, and you love on it, right? And you say, wow, I have such capacity to love and to feel and to care. That's also something important to point out, because that's empathy and compassion. And that's why we're here on this planet, isn't
right.
it?
Exactly.
To love.
To love.
Isn't that the S? Yeah, to love. And so when we deny somebody's sadness, we're almost denying the love that they had, which is really invalidating. And when you invalidate a kid's experience, they get really agitated. So the famous psychiatrist Dan Siegel says, name it to tame it. Name the feeling to tame the feeling. So as opposed, you're not sad.
Right.
Oh, you're so sad. Wow. I see how sad you are. Right. I get it. I'm sad. Mommy's sad too. Yeah. Daddy's sad too. So I just think it's something so beautiful about an opportunity to teach working through big, big emotions. And welcome to life. Right. There's some big, big emotions coming. It might be the first, but it will not be the last. Right. And you have to tolerate all those uncomfortable feelings. Right. And love on them. And then think, gosh, how lucky I am that my little girl is throwing her body over the dog as the dog is dying, that she has that much capacity to love. Yeah. We did good. We did. Yeah.
And animals tend to have the ability to teach us to love, to bring out that love unconditionally. Yeah. We learn so much about love from our animals as well. So
yes. Why do you think animals are such safe objects? They feel very safe to me.
Well, because they're not, dogs especially. I don't know anything about cats, but they love you unconditionally and they don't judge you. They allow us to be ourselves with them, right? They hold our deepest, darkest secrets sometimes, and they see us at our best and they see us at our worst, and they're still there loving us through it all. So
yeah. My grandfather, when my grandmother would come home from work, she would say, how come you don't react to me like you react to the dog? And he said, you wag your tail and lick me when I get home.
Are you as excited to see me as the dog is? Or are you saying, why are you 5 minutes late?
Exactly. It's that, like you say, that waggy, unconditional, it's kind of unbridled joy.
Exactly.
You've helped me to understand animals when you're like, oh, that's a shepherd's job to bark.
Yes.
You get how animals are and how they be, versus like, oh, that dog is really barking. That dog's scary. Oh no, that's just her dog. That's just her job.
Well, I'm learning new things. I learn more every day about dogs, and I've cared for your dog since they were babies, and so I know that shepherd.
The one I'm mentioning.
I do know her and her barking.
And then you realize the capacity for love is so deep that when you move away and they move next to you, or when you see them. So I think learning to love as a child through animals, when let's say parents aren't safe, is an important place, to have a lot of furry friends in a house with little kids where you get that experience of unconditional love, because it is so intoxicating, unconditional love, right? It's quite something, and it feels profoundly safe. And then they change your neurochemistry. I guess the last point is that oxytocin is secreted in your brain when you're cuddling a brand new baby. Yeah. And it's also if you're petting a dog, right? It's the love hormone. So oxytocin, just feeling that fur and snuggling and petting. It's just very comforting on so many levels. So that also adds to the love potion of dogs.
And that's also part of why dogs are so special to us, right?
Yeah. And I think that's why, when they talk about, in my world, would you write me a letter for, this dog is really my companion and I need to bring the dog on the plane. And I know that particular evolver, it's true. That dog it's a mutual kind of love affair between, those two. So it's been a joy to learn the love of animals through you and through my son.
And through your husband. He loves the animals too, for sure.
Yeah, I was like, did you just say doggy massage? What about a mommy massage? That's all that. You can talk about when I ate the last time or only the dogs. Yeah, I have two empathic animal lovers in this house on steroids. So you can appreciate them. But I think it's such a gift for kids to feel heard and to feel seen. It's the highest form of love, and to say your feelings are so, I get it. And I'm touched by how much you love. And not to skip over, not to pretend, not to make go away, not to go to the toy store. I mean, I've heard every version. The dog died, I'm going to the toy store. The dog died, we're going to get ice cream. What a crazy message. Love can be filled up with an ice cream scoop or, a box of Legos. It's so messed up. And then we wonder why people have eating disorders, or we wonder why they shop when they're upset, right? Because we're basically saying, I can't tolerate this, so let's make it go away. And I think
I can't tolerate you being uncomfortable,
right?
Because it affects me. So let's
right. And I always say the job of a parent is get comfortable being uncomfortable. And we cannot solve things. We cannot fix things. We are not that powerful. But like Buddhism says, I don't know how much you know about Buddhism, but that you get up and one of the prayers is you contemplate your own death. And I'm not a Buddhist, but I always thought that was such an interesting, beautiful thing, like that death is part of life. And whatever you're worrying about is that important when you're contemplating your own death. So to take out the love that comes from an animal and death seems like you're depriving a kid of a real, like you say, profound experience to know themselves.
Living experience.
Yeah. And to know resiliency too. And I can survive this kind of a loss, even if I'm wailing and throwing my body on that animal. And I remember when my little guys were making that video of the dog and bawling, and it was painful to watch them bawling. And also, that's the dialectic, the holding two feelings. Also quite joyful that they cared enough to do that ceremony like you did as a third grader, right?
Yeah.
It's so sweet.
So sweet. I don't know which dog you're talking about. This dog was before my time.
This was before your time. This was a pre-Charlotte dog.
What was the dog's name?
Domino, a Canaan, a brown and white dog that predated me. It showed up when I showed up to married life. That dog already was here. So my kids only knew life with that dog. And it's funny, I have videos of my youngest son crawling before he could speak to pet the dog. And I have videos of him just crawling toward the dog. And so
such a love.
I do think there's something about an animal lover that's really, really in the DNA. It's in the DNA, and he, you have it, like you say, my husband has it, he has it, but it's just, I recognize you as a wonderful part of joy in this world. So they're all animal lovers, just like you. Takes one to know one, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Robin. Do you have anything that you want to add, or you think we're pretty good with the conversation?
I mean, I think allowing people to feel, even if it's a friend, if it's sometimes people don't want to have any conversation that's uncomfortable, which I would call a courageous conversation, like sitting your kids down to say something happened, the dog died. That the only way out is through, and people want to avoid. Anxiety loves avoidance. It thrives on avoidance. So you want to lose weight. Oh, well, I'm just going to have, this bag of chips because I don't want to deal with it, or Ben and Jerry's, so I think really knowing that you can teach people to feel at home with their feelings is such a gift. And what we know about brain scanning and brain images is like the brain grows on love. Literally grows on love. And so you have this growth mode, and then you have a shutdown mode. So we don't want to have our kids feel like their sadness needs to be shut down and shut off, and defenses go up. And so I think, as sad as it is to lose a pet, I think it really is a Mr. Rogers moment. I mean, and here he was this amazing guy who did an episode about a dead goldfish. And I remember watching it thinking, oh, those are 4-year-olds watching this. Those are 3-year-olds. Those are 2-year-olds watching Mr. Rogers. And that's who he was targeting. Okay, friends, feelings are our friends, right? Yeah. Welcome them. It's like that Rumi poem about welcome all feelings. They're all like rooms in your home. Just let them pass through. So I think allowing the arc and processing your own grief as a parent, so you can hold the space for your child and stay very calm and very zen, and not join them. Sometimes when kids get riled up, their parents get riled up, and they're, it's tough. It's a tough job, this parenting thing. It's a tall order, and you only have to be good enough. When you make a mistake, you get to go back and say, can I have a mommy do-over? Can I have I messed that up. What I meant to say was, so that's the beauty. Kids are very forgiving, as are pets, I've noticed.
Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm honored.
Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Baru Podcast. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to rate, follow, and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at Baru Podcast. If you have a story of canine companionship that you want to share with me, or a question, or even a comment, please, I would love to hear from you. You can email me at charlotte@thebaru.com. All right, you guys, let's chat next week.